it defines the Bangsamoro peoples as those who are native to the identified area of Bangsamoro during the colonization. The question, so that first of all, how do we determine that? Number one, because it's a related issue to the indigenous peoples. And secondly, what's the status of people who moved into the Bangsamoro area since colonization? There are many Filipinos who have moved from other parts of the Philippines to what is now going to be the Bangsamoro. Since then, what are they part of the Bangsamoro? Are they defined as part of the Bangsamoro people?
Your Honor, it's a long history to tell, but I'll make it very brief, just to provide context to the question of Your Honor. The word Moro was first used by the Spaniards when they encountered Raja Sulaiman and Raja Lakandula in Manila. Because Manila then was populated by two peoples, the Moros, who are Muslims, and then what we call that term in Indios. Meaning, the term Moro was originally used to describe the Muslims in Manila. And then throughout the more than 300 years of warfare between Spain and the Moros, the term Moro was consistently used. And it is basically a religious term, because when you say Moros, they are Muslims. When the Americans came, of course, there were wars between the Americans and the Moros. And they organized the Moro province. And the Moro province was composed of 5 districts: Zamboanga, Sulu, Lanao, Cotabato, and Davao. And more than 90% of the population of the Moro province, which was made of 5 districts, were Muslims or Moros and indigenous peoples. Why did we adopt the term Bangsamoro? Was it an invention of the Moro National Liberation Front? No, it was not an invention of the Moro National Liberation Front. It was called from a petition on February 24, 1924 in Zamboanga City, signed by all the major leaders of the Moros, wherein they said that because the Moros at that time were against the grant of independence, but the Americans decided that the Moros would be part of the Philippines in the grant of independence in 1946. But as early as 1924, the Moros were already protesting to be included in the future Bangsamoro and in the future Republic of the Philippines. So they said that 50 years after this petition, which was in 1924, then the Moros would be given a chance to determine their political status. And they wanted that they would be called a Moro nation. And that is the origin of the word Bangsamoro, Moro nation. In other words, originally the word Bangsamoro includes the indigenous peoples, because they were the inhabitants during the time of conquest and colonization. So originally they were part of the Moros, because when the Moro province was organized, they were part of the Moro province, the Moros and the indigenous peoples. So as to the migrants in Mindanao, I think when we use the term Bangsamoro, because they were not original inhabitants of Mindanao, because the Christian settlers in Mindanao only came there in 1913 during the Americans' regime, but most of the migrants in Mindanao came later, especially when there was an act in the Commonwealth in 1935, when there was that act called Quirino Recto Colonization Act, and that was the beginning of wholesale migration of people from Luzon and Visayas to Mindanao. But what is important here, Your Honor, is that although by identity the migrants are not identified as Bangsamoro, but the basic rights are extended to them.
or they can be accepted by the populace as just like them, in the same way that,
But-
say,
Yeah, but the formal recognition as a part of the Bangsamoro people.
Maybe to, to answer that to your question,
Perhaps I would
Honor.
like
maybe-
to adopt already their chosen area, the chosen culture. They have chosen to stay in Bangsamoro and would like, for example, to adopt the ways, the procedures, the culture, even the language, the law. But they do not have any lineage. They have no blood lineage to show to those indigenous during colonization. Can they still be self-ascribe to being a Bangsamoro person?
I think, Your Honor, the Bangsamoro Parliament can be mandated to pass legislation throughout regarding the operationalization of that self-ascription or ascription process. The Bangsamoro Parliament, Your Honor, maybe is the one that would be tasked to do that.
So yeah, I think I agree with Chairman Iqbal. Maybe the Parliament can provide for a law, but as stressed by the Secretary, it should not matter, di ba? It should not matter whether you are a Bangsamoro or a non-Bangsamoro. In the Bangsamoro territory, it should not matter. All rights, privileges are available to you, as well as all the duties you also have to observe.
In terms of basic rights, Your Honor,
Okay,
there
yeah.
are a few items
There are
there
a
that
few-
talks about preferential rights. But in fact, the preferential rights to fishing, for example, in the Bangsamoro water, in the zone, also includes native inhabitants of other areas. So, it may be in the yes. So there are always, when there are preferential rights for descendants of the original inhabitants, that will include those who are description.
Also be
A sort of an autonomy in the
that created of Parliament of the Bangsamoro and financed by the Bangsamoro government, in the same way that other local governments have also created their own universities or colleges. But otherwise, SUCs that were created by national legislation will continue to be governed by the legislation.
Yeah, that may be something we should look at, because precisely as I said, in fairness to CHED, they've done so much in terms of rationalization, and we as a national policy, in a way, we're against more SUCs. So not against Bangsamoro having another SUC, but at the rate that we're going, with the quality of education not being as good as it is, the ideal is really to try to improve the existing. No? So that's what I'm saying. Those are the concerns, because that is a policy that we're trying to be consistent with in CHED. And you brought up an interesting point that Senator Marcos and I were sort of whispering about, is the way it sounds, it's almost like a local university or college, not necessarily a state university and college. So just things that we really have to think about, and by the time we finalize this, know exactly what we have in mind, because the state support is different from SUCs, for SUCs, and that they don't get colleges and universities of cities and municipalities don't get support from the national government. So these are things that we really would need to think about.
When it comes to the